Start. Great. Well, welcome again. And so one of the really remarkable things about the post-pandemic U.S. educational scene was the growth of homeschooling in the United States. There aren't really official numbers, but perhaps the number of families choosing to homeschool, has doubled or even a bit more. And so one of the first questions that new homeschooling families or people just even considering homeschooling ask is just, can my kid still go to college if they don't go to conventional high school? And the answer is absolutely yes. And so if you're wondering, how that's even possible, you've come to the right place. So we have an excellent panel assembled tonight that's going to kind of walk us through the entire process from how to manage the high school years as a homeschooler to how to search for the right colleges. And finally, what colleges are looking for in homeschooling applicants. So we have Allison Snikis, who's a former homeschooling parent and staff member at our sister center, the Raritan Learning Cooperative. We have Barbara Rappaport from Rappaport Consulting, who helps families navigate the college selection application process. And we have Natalie Blaze, who's an admission counselor at St. John's College. They have campuses in Annapolis and Santa Fe. So again, welcome. And we're going to start with Allison tonight. So Heather, if you'd like to highlight Allison, we'll get started.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hi. I've been a mentor and a teacher at Princeton and Raritan Learning Cooperatives in New Jersey since 2012. And each year I've had the opportunity to work with a few young people and their families to apply to four-year college directly from homeschooling high school, to package their unconventional path through high school into a form that college admissions staff can understand. Prior to Princeton and Raritan Learning Cooperatives, I homeschooled my two sons and supported them to apply to college in the role of homeschool supervisor. So in this session, we will focus on applying to a four-year college as a freshman, with the understanding that this is not the only or best path. Another excellent option that many young people choose is to start at community college and then transfer to a four-year college if they want to continue. And some young people move into the work world following high school and then pursue further education as needed later on. So I want to start by talking about the years leading up to applying to college. Leaving conventional high school to homeschool or unschool or self-direct one's education offers the teen the freedom and flexibility to choose an educational path that best suits them. So here's some examples of how they could be flexible. If they have a strong interest in something, they can go more deeply into that topic, spend more time on it, and other things can take more of a back seat or be aligned to that interest. For example, a history buff reading historical fiction for English. You don't have to read the books that are typically read in high school English class. You could read something that's more aligned with your particular interests. If they're not sure what their interests are, they have time to explore options, to try things out without the penalty of getting a bad grade or having to stick it out in something they discovered is not for them for the rest of the semester or a year. For example, trying Japanese. I've seen a number of young people who enjoy anime or manga, and they're like, oh, geez, maybe I want to study Japanese and learn it as a foreign language. And they get started with a tutor or in a class, and they come to find that there's three alphabets, and that learning the character system was a lot harder than they thought it would be. And they're like, oh, geez, I don't know that I want to continue this. Well, they don't have to stay in the class or the course or with the tutor. They could just continue because they're homeschooling. And it's not like they'll never study Japanese again. Perhaps they will, but now they know a bit about it, so that time they spent with it isn't a waste of time at all. It informs their decisions later on in life for sure. If a young person really wants to learn something and is not finding success in what they're doing, they can try a different method. For example, studying math with a textbook. It might be a young person who has trouble loses the textbook or leaves it behind or doesn't have it with them when the time comes to meet with the tutor. And it may be that, well, using a textbook might not be the right choice for them. They could change methods, right? So there's just more flexibility there. Maybe use Khan Academy and online that you have access to. And depending on their needs, they may move faster or take longer to study the topic than a conventional school class. And none of these changes and explorations need to impact an application to college. Many colleges list recommended academic courses on their website that teens should complete in preparation for applying or attending that college. Our experience at the learning cooperatives has been that there's often wiggle room on this, that colleges get that homeschoolers live their lives often without regard to what's academic and what's extracurricular. Colleges are quite flexible in what can count for various recommended courses. So here's some examples. So English can be reading books you're interested in, discussing them with friends and family, and then writing about them in a personal journal. Spanish study can be traveling to a Spanish-speaking country or being part of a Spanish-speaking community in the US, watching movies and TV shows in Spanish and working through a grammar workbook. A history course can be watching historically based films and documentaries, visiting historical sites on vacation, following a history-related YouTuber, and volunteering at the local history museum, and other examples like that. Now, to communicate what a teen has done during their high school years, we recommend using a narrative transcript, which includes a rich description of their unconventional studies. We work with high school age teens to document all of the things they're doing in their lives as the raw data that we will use to create this narrative when the time comes. A transcript is a record of what the applicant has studied in their high school years, not to be confused with a diploma, which certifies that a person has completed the required curriculum. Most colleges do not require a diploma in the application, but all require a transcript. It can be tricky navigating the college's requirements for homeschoolers. What I've seen is the colleges tend to require the applicant to have met the graduation requirements in the state they are located in, the state where the college is located, which rarely works for an out-of-state applicant. And as an alternative, the college may request a score report from a general education diploma test like a GED or a HiSET test. If you're interested to hear more about colleges requiring a GED diploma, please ask in the Q&A portion. There's more that I could say about this if there's interest. In the application, a parent of the homeschooler serves in the guidance counselor role. They sign and submit the official transcript. If using the Common App, they answer the questions about homeschooling philosophy and methods. They can also write a letter of recommendation. Some colleges use their own systems for the application process, and in these cases, it's a good idea to talk with the admissions office about how to handle a homeschooling application. And it's always best for the teen to be the first one to contact admissions about this rather than the parent. So have the teen call first, and then if the parent needs to follow up to figure out some specifics, yeah, that works. I've met scores of homeschoolers over the years since 2000, and everyone who has wanted to go to college has gone, and often they've gone to their first choice college and found it to be a rewarding experience.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison. Lovely. So we'll move on this evening. And so we're going to hear from Barbara Rappaport next, who has Rappaport Consulting and works with families in the college search and application process. So Heather, if you want to highlight Barbara. And away we go.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks so much, Joel. And Allison, thank you for covering so much of what I was going to talk about. So yay, that was awesome. So a gazillion years ago, Allison and I homeschooled our youngest kids together, and we did these kinds of presentations for our local community group. We have very similar philosophies on education and homeschooling, and she's spot on in what she shared. So what Joel had asked me to cover tonight was the college selection process for homeschoolers. How do you figure out which colleges to apply to? And that process isn't really very different for homeschoolers than it is for traditionally schooled students. When I'm working with students, the things that I'm encouraging them to do is think about three broad categories. an academic piece, a social piece, and a financial piece. So for the academics, we're thinking about what are the things that you want to learn and how do you learn best? So maybe you're somebody who's already honed in on a narrow area that they want to study. Maybe you're so certain that you want to be an engineer because you've had a chance to already work on projects and confirm that. Or maybe you're sure that you want to pursue something in the visual or performing arts, and you've had a lot of experience doing that. That's not the majority of students that I've worked with. The majority of students that I work with really aren't sure exactly what it is that they want to study. And they're looking for an education where they can explore a lot of different areas. And the next piece is, how do you learn best? Maybe you're somebody who really enjoys working in a small group and having discussions with your peers. Maybe you're somebody who really likes to do in-depth reading, or somebody who learns best by watching videos, or somebody who learns best by putting their hands on something. Most of us don't just have one way that we learn best, but there's some combination that works best for us. So when we're looking at the academic piece, we're looking at those two aspects. And then we're also looking at the level of competition or collaboration that feels right for you. Some colleges are best for students that really thrive on trying to be the one that's getting to the top and getting the A and maybe gradings on a bell curve. And some students really want to work in a more collaborative environment. They're really not interested in outdoing their peers. They're really interested in working together with everyone to try to find solutions to problems. So that's the academic piece. For the social piece, I encourage the students I'm working with to think very broadly. So it's not really about how often do you like to go to parties, although maybe that's a part of it. It's really everything, that every way you spend your time when you're not in a classroom or a lab or a studio. So are you somebody who wants to commute to college from home, or do you want to live on campus? If you want to live on campus, how close or how far from home do you want to be? Are there parts of the country that you would want to be in because of activities that you enjoy? Maybe you're somebody who likes to go snow skiing, so you would want to be near a mountain. Or somebody who enjoys surfing, maybe you'd want to be near an ocean. Are you somebody who likes warm weather or cold weather? Whatever you're looking for climatically, what kinds of things have you enjoyed doing in high school? Are you somebody who enjoys playing music with other people? Somebody who enjoys being involved in theater, either acting on stage or designing sets? Whatever it is that you've enjoyed doing, if you want to continue doing it in college, you want to think about, does the college have those kinds of opportunities for you? And maybe there's something that you've never tried before that you're curious about. Does the college offer that piece to you? And then the final piece is the affordability piece. I'm not sure who all is listening today or who'll be listening in the future. It might be more of a question for parents than students, but college costs a lot of money, right? For where I'm located in New Jersey, the average cost of a public university is about $35,000 a year, all in. And the average cost of a private university is closer to $85,000 a year, all in. So what's your family's budget? What kinds of schools might you be eligible for financial aid at? What kinds of schools might you be eligible for merit aid at? So that's the selection piece. We're looking at those three buckets, and the colleges that are a good fit for you are going to be the places where those three buckets intersect or overlap. once you've figured out which colleges you want to apply to, then there's the actual application process. And Allison started to touch on that and talked about transcripts and the potentially needing a GED. I agree, the regulations for state universities tend to be tied a little bit to the regulations around homeschooling in any particular state. But even so, I would encourage you to reach out, as Allison said, to the individual colleges. I mean, even here in New Jersey, there's a variation in our state universities for what kinds of credentials that they're looking for from their homeschooled students. Some are fine with a parent-generated transcript, and others do want that GED. There are other ways to demonstrate your learning besides a transcript. When you actually complete the application, there's places for you to talk about the activities that you've participated in. There are places for you to demonstrate your writing skills. And from the other people's side of things, in addition to what your parents send, you can ask people you've worked with for letters of recommendation. So I think I'm probably at the end of my time, Joel, and please, if you have questions, add them to the chat.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Okay, and our last panelist for this evening is Natalie from St. John's College. So,
Hi, okay, I'm very excited to be here this evening, and I love that you guys are getting sort of this inside view from all these different perspectives. So I will, I'm excited to share sort of the college perspective. I'll talk a little bit about St. John's specifically, but I'm also happy to field questions sort of about what colleges are looking for in general from homeschooled students. But a couple things. I think that it's really important to know that homeschooling and being a homeschooled student can really be a huge advantage in the admissions process. I think rather than it seeming daunting, I hope that it's sort of an exciting thing for you and that you should go into the process knowing that you bring a lot to the table. So there are over 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States alone. So it's a lot. As the selection process we just heard, there's a lot of different fits and climates. But I also like to share that because there's no one great place. There's no one perfect place for anyone. I think there's lots of really good options. And so hopefully there's sort of some joy in kind of searching through and kind of visiting and kind of finding out about your different possibilities. So I will say that I've been on other panels with large universities, public, private, small, liberal arts colleges, more sort of research-focused universities. And one of the things that I have heard time and time again from my colleagues, my professional colleagues, is that in most cases, they really do want to hear from the students, the applicants. And that can be something as simple as opening an email from the college, or maybe you're interested in a place, you fill out a digital inquiry card, open up those emails and engage in that process, find out more, ask them a question, ask them about what their requirements are. That's okay, read through the website first. But I think that most admissions officers welcome those kinds of questions. UC Berkeley doesn't have time to kind of respond to everyone's email, but again, of those 4,000 colleges, maybe 60 of them are highly selective, meaning that they accept less than 30% of their applicant pool. So that leaves what, 4,000, or that leaves like over almost 4,000 other colleges that have different metrics. They're looking for different things. So I just think it's really important to kind of know that you have a lot of options. And I am going to share one of my favorite tools for looking at colleges. There's a great website called Colleges That Change Lives, ctcl.org. And so if you are thinking, at least initially, that maybe a smaller liberal arts college might be something that you would enjoy. This is a particularly interesting list. Let's see, let me see if I can share a URL. We're all very different. There's about 44 different colleges in that group. We're geographically diverse, but we also have different programs and majors. So what I like about it is that it kind of gives some great meaty information about the colleges, not just the statistics, not just how many students, what their majors are, but it kind of gives you a sense of what it might be like to be a student there. So read through some of those profiles. But in terms of the application process in general, I just want to say a word about the FAFSA and the GED requirements. So I think you guys are sort of in good shape because you, if you know, through the Princeton Learning Corporation and these other associations, you'll have a transcript. There is a federal requirement that if you're applying for need-based federal aid, you need to have either a transcript that certifies that you've met the requirements of something or a GED. So that is a federal requirement in order to be eligible for federal financial aid. But that is a great question to sort of ask your admissions person that you're working with at whatever college or university that you're applying to. You know, what are their requirements? What suffices in terms of a transcript and things like that. So I think that that is just also something good. The other thing is that almost no one pays sticker price at these universities and colleges. And yes, the prices have skyrocketed especially for four-year liberal arts colleges. It can seem really intimidating, but also know that you can kind of enter this process with some confidence. And in terms of the admissions process, it is often tied to the financial aid process, but some questions to sort of keep in mind are, you know, are you need blind? Like, will you evaluate my admissions application without respect or without regard to my ability to pay? Most colleges are need blind. St. John's has been need blind, always been need blind, but that's a good question to ask, a clarifying question. The other thing is that you will probably, or maybe have already noticed, there's lots of different ways. Some colleges will have multiple different ways that you can apply to them. So the most common of which is the Common App, which, you know, by its very name suggests so. But just kind of beware if you're starting that process. Some colleges will require extra pieces. So it's always good to sort of be aware of like what they're asking for. St. John's, for example, does require an additional essay. It is a mandatory supplemental essay requirement. We ask you to write about a book and kind of why it's great to you and kind of what your sort of an analytical take on it, but also a reflective piece. And so whether or not a college asks for an extra essay in addition to the Common App essay, I think it's also important to know that when we're reading your applications, not only are we looking to see, you know, what your academic preparation will be, and, you know, will you be set up to sort of succeed in our academic environments, but also what kind of student, what kind of person will you be on our campuses? So all of those things that you might do, you know, you might work, you might volunteer, you may have done other projects, like all of that can really go into sort of building kind of a fuller picture of what you bring to the table. So I think that as a homeschooling student, you may have a fantastic advantage over some traditional, you know, schooled students. So know that is important to college admissions folks too. Joel, how much time do I have? Do I have a few more minutes?
You do.
Okay. So for St. John's in particular, I also want to say I'm pretty excited about this. St. John's is a largely self-selecting place. We do all discussion-based classes. We are small. We are very interdisciplinary. We study the humanities and the sciences, and we do it from reading great texts, great thinkers across, you know, 3,000 years of human development. But so it helps us for students to kind of get to know us. So we launched a new kind of a way to apply to St. John's. You can still apply through the Common App, but we will also launch something called a discussion-based application. And essentially the components of that are to participate in a seminar that we have in a class actually led by a faculty member. There's a small reading, there's a, you know, an hour and a half long conversation We do these over Zoom. We also have an in-person summer academy that also qualifies for that kind of participation. So we really want you to kind of try it out. So there's the trying it out piece. There is the interview with admissions counselor like me, and then there is an interview with a faculty member. And those can all be done over Zoom or in person. And then we, of course, we ask you to upload a transcript. We do really love those narrative transcripts that kind of explain and give us some idea of like what you've studied and how you've studied it and what you kind of got out of it. Kind of the more information, the better in our case, in St. John's case. So we ask you to upload a transcript, and then we also ask you to upload an essay that you wrote for a class. And it can be, it can be anything that you think that really represents your ability to sort of write well and to think well. So those are the components to our new discussion-based application. And so I think that that's kind of an exciting different way. We are also able to sort of give you a decision within about 2 weeks of the time that those requirements are met. So we're always kind of trying to figure out different ways to do things, but if you prefer the more traditional Common App approach, that's okay too. And it can be a really nice way because and I'm sure many of you have already maybe started a Common App, but it does allow you to sort of apply to multiple schools at once, but just being aware that some of those schools and universities might have different requirements. So let me see, I'm going to share one more link here. But overall, and I will share this link. Let's see. This at St. John's, we have found because of our unique academic program that homeschoolers from all over tend to really thrive in our environment, partly because it's the community, but partly it's the academic program and how we do it. So we are very enthusiastic to work with you, and you're welcome to kind of ask questions along the way. And whether you apply to St. John's or someplace else, I think don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they're just logistical questions, even if it's, financial aid or just, maybe a technical question. It is much better to reach out to someone, pick up the phone and call someone at the admissions office. I actually tell this to, when I do presentations with other kids, almost no one uses the phone nowadays. And yet every admissions office that I know, from like big university to small college, has student workers working the telephones in those admissions offices. So kind of a fun thing. And there's nothing really to lose is to, if you're interested in a particular college, call them. Call the admissions office, during the day and ask if you can speak to one of their student workers. If the student worker doesn't answer the phone, like just say, hey, I'm really interested in your college. And, I was wondering if there was a student there that I could talk to about their experience. And, there might be a moment of pause and shock, but I guarantee that they will hook you up with a current student to talk to. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Well, wonderful. So, Heather, if you want to unspotlight Natalie, and I see the questions are rolling in. So we're gonna get to the questions now. So if you have a question for any of the panelists, go ahead and put it in the chat, and I will just kind of feed that in, and whoever would like to speak on it can. So we had a question. I'll just kind of sort of take them in chronological order here. Is it suggested to provide more than what's initially asked for? For example, if we want to apply a place that just asks for a transcript, is it helpful to include an essay or just do what is asked? If anyone has any thoughts.
Yeah, I can speak to that. You may not have an opportunity to provide everything that you want to provide, but you should take advantage of all the spaces that you can provide information that helps to elucidate what it was that your child did. So if you're using the Common Application, there's a space where I think it's 650 words where you can put in information that isn't included in other parts of the application that helps the reader have more insight. So that's the student's piece of things that you're including. On the parent side, there's much more information that you can share because you can upload multi-page documents. So it sort of depends what it is that you want to share for where the best place is to share it.
Can I just add to that a little bit?
Yeah.
But just what Barbara said, really look at the application, any application that you're doing, and think about each of those components as being able to sort of showcase a different part of you. So some students will choose to write their Common App essay, maybe on some activities that they did, but those activities are already listed in a separate part of the Common App. And if, it varies, it always varies by student, but maybe there is a way to use that essay to really, share with the committee something that will not be revealed by the other pieces of the application. So think about it sort of strategically to like give yourself the fullest chance to sort of share yourself with that admissions committee.
Okay, great. Looking at the next one, thinking about transfers and how sort of taking community college classes during high school while you're homeschooling, how that meshes into a future perhaps transfer, and how and if they'll need to mesh high school and college when they apply. So I don't know if anybody would like to take.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what the person's asking, so I'll try to answer all the things I think they may be asking. So if there's a difference between a transfer student and somebody who's an entering first year student from the college perspective. So a transfer student is somebody who's been enrolled in a college as a college student. And I differentiate that from a high school student who's taking dual enrollment courses to fulfill high school requirements. If you're taking those classes as a dual enrollment student, the way those credits are viewed are going to differ by the college that you're applying to. So I can give you an example. I homeschool my 3 children. They all took the exact same science class at our local community college, and they went to 3 different colleges. At one college, the course was considered a fulfillment of a science requirement at that college. At another college, it was not considered to fulfill a science requirement, but was accepted as a general education course. And for the 3rd student, it was just a pat on the back. Yay, you took a class at community college. That's great. And it didn't count for anything. So I don't know if that answered the person's question. Hopefully it did.
And maybe I could add on a little bit to that, is that and I think when you're trying to decide whether to take dual enrollment classes, it can be like, oh great, if we take this one, then it might work, you think it's going to work out later, and they don't all work out, right? So my 2 kids and the kids I've worked with, generally speaking, they don't all work out for transfer credit. So you're going to submit your dual enrolled class to the college for credit and credit towards graduation, and sometimes for placement, right? So it might be good enough to take, Calc 1 and 2 in high school, and maybe they don't take it for credit, but maybe they'll take it for placement, so that you could start with Calc 3 and not have to take Calc 1 and 2 there, right? So there's going to be different ways, and I don't think you can know that ahead of time, particularly, right? And I think as parents, what I've found and what I've seen for parents is it's a good idea for kids in high school, if it suits them and they're interested, to take college level classes at a community college. And I think it's worth the investment, even if they don't end up transferring, because they're going to have, it's going to validate their learning to a certain extent. So it's going to be on their transcript as like a grade that came from a college professor. And so there's other reasons, I think. So just adding that on.
I actually wanted to jump in and add one more thing. For many states, there's a transfer widget that you can use to see whether the community college class that you're taking in your state will, or how the class will be viewed by a four-year college in your state. So if you think that there's a chance that your student is going to stay in state and you have an idea of colleges that they might be interested in, it's worth it to look at that widget if it exists where you live, and see, whether the class you think will transfer will in fact transfer, or if maybe if your intent in taking those classes is to have transferable credits, to maybe consider some other options that would transfer.
And also too, in the with dual enrollment, for example, St. John's, we don't take transfer credit, but 24% of our students are transfer students. But it does factor into our merit aid consideration. So if we see someone, whether they're a homeschool student or a traditional high school student, if we see them having dual enrollment at a community college, at a university, and they're doing well in those classes, that to us is a in the column of a favorable, that can really result in additional merit aid for that student. So yet another consideration.
So we have a quick sort of technical question about transcripts. So if you have a young person who did some public
And if and then, if you have any official transcripts, or what I recommend to families is to get an unofficial version of that and add it to the PDF at the end of the narrative transcript. And then colleges can see that these things came from there, and there are the grades, and that's how it worked. And then if they want the official transcript later on, they can get that. So that's the way we handle it here.
Yeah, that's generally the advice that I give to the families that I'm working with too. It also doesn't hurt to reach out to the admissions counselor at whatever school you're applying to and ask if they have a preference or a requirement.
Very good. And I did see a question about, do we have any homeschool high school transcript templates? I think Pan put one of those link into the chat earlier, but maybe she could do that again. So another question here, for parents of unschoolers, what kind of things can you do to encourage them to keep all of their options, college options, open as they move down the road? All these different types of colleges. So I don't know, Allison. Seems like a more young, high school focused question. I don't know if you want to take a shot at that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how to help them keep their options open? I think I work in a very consent-based environment. That's what I believe in. I believe that kids should have a say in how they want things to be. And I think one of the things that we work with kids on is to observe who they are and what they like, and share that with them, right? And share with them that, I really noticed that you're quite good at organizing things, or I really noticed that you're really personable with people. I noticed that you like to take things apart, whatever it is that we notice about them, and then have a conversation about that. And and I think Barbara could probably follow up on this better than I can, but then, engage with them a little bit about career exploration, right? With that thing that you are good at, like noticing that thing, right? Like what sorts of careers, might you be interested in, right? And what do those careers require, right? And so engaging with them, right? So it's less about encouraging them to do anything in particular, And it's more about engaging with them about what their options are, what path they might want to take, and how they might navigate their high school to begin to get on that path, right? So someone who's might be interested in my son went to the United States Merchant Marine Academy, which is regimental. So before he went, it was useful for him to be in a regimental situation before he got there. So he was part of the Civil Air Patrol, where you had to wear a particular uniform and you got yelled at and you had to do things a certain way and you had to learn a certain way. And because that was very representative of what he thought he might do going forward. And so I think having that experience in high school can help kids a lot. Somebody who wants to be a doctor, it's super useful to start volunteering at the hospital, right? And to sort of get that firsthand experience. And then from there, you can say, well, here's the kinds of studies that go with that path forward, right? So you want to be an engineer, you're going to need to get that, your math going. Right. And there's still plenty of time, right? You think, oh, geez, that, they're 15 or 16 and they haven't done Algebra 1 yet. There's time, right? They can get that done, right? If that's the path they want to be on, it will very likely happen. So I don't know, Barbara, you could probably speak more to this as well, the career option.
Yeah. So, yeah, I took a very similar approach with my kids, and I take a similar approach with the families that I work with. A lot of homeschoolers come to me in middle school and they want to lay out a plan for high school. And what I encourage families to do is talk to their kids about, do you see college as a possible option for you once you're done with high school? And if the answer is yes, then look at what the requirements are for the colleges in your state. I guess that's where I would start, for your state flagship. There's going to be a lot of variation in what specific requirements colleges are looking for, but generally speaking, any college wants to know that you can successfully handle the academics and that you're going to be a contributing member to the community, right? So how are you going to contribute to our community, and are you going to be able to learn in our environment? So for the academic piece, that means challenging yourself with the resources that are available to you in sort of the 5 general academic categories, right? English, math, science, social studies, and a world language, and taking some electives. Now, as Allison said before, English doesn't mean necessarily sitting down with a grammar textbook or, looking like a traditional 9th grade English class would look. One of my daughters, who is now an education assistant at Lincoln Center and went on to get a master's in teaching theater, her high school English classes were all called From the Page to the Stage, and they consisted of reading plays and performing in plays and going to see plays, right? So she had 4 years of English, but it didn't look like 4 years of English at a traditional high school. And I think the other piece, the how you contribute to the community is maybe, and Natalie, you may want to speak to this too. I think it's become more significant over the last few years than it had been before, right? There's been a move from colleges to looking at how you can evaluate character traits. And by that, it's right, how you act in the world. So, maybe it's how you're contributing to your family. Do you have a younger sibling or an older person who needs your help? Is there an elderly neighbor that you can help out? All those sorts of things, go into you being a high school student and a contributing member to the community. And did you want to talk about that at all, the character collaborative? Or
are you talking to me? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just what Barbara said too. And I will just underscore that that is true. I just traveled with 12 colleges around visiting different schools and learned an interesting thing. Davidson College in North Carolina, they actually, one of the parts of their application is a recommendation from a peer, because they really want to know what kind of student you're going to be in the community. And so I thought that was really interesting. But also too, I mean, sometimes, you know, it's okay to jump around from different job or different volunteer opportunity, but I will say that there is value in sticking with something, and you know, whether that's helping a neighbor or, you know, volunteering, you know, at a community center or church or school or some other way. Doing something over a longer period of time, I think also shows kind of commitment and stability, and that you show up. And so versus having, you know, 5 million different activities that you've done each for like 5 weeks or something. So, you know, try to sort of balance that out too when you're thinking about your activities. And
Great. We
I
had a
want
question.
to just add a tiny little bit more, and that is like to the parents, keep track of what your kids are doing. So like that keeps college open, that keeps the option open, because there's a lot of learning that happens in regular everyday life and all the things, and look for things to do with them, right? So like look for, you know, things that, you know, watch documentaries together, watch, you know, interesting movies together, go to things in your community, like do things together, and like keep track of all of that. And a lot of times you can package them together in a way that, you know, oh, all of these things are the Englishy things, they go in the English bucket, right? All of these things are, you know, more like history kinds of things, or world history, or social issues, or we went to this protest together, you know. So that I think can be a really rich way. They don't all have to be, you know, academic courses where the kid has worked through particular things. So
Great. We had a question sort of about timing. You know, they ask if you know, if a student takes 5 years to complete, you know, homeschooling high school, does it make it harder to get accepted into colleges? And follow up, do colleges frown upon students who choose like gap years, or like, you know, starting later than what is typical, I guess?
I feel like you should talk about that, Natalie.
well, so, and maybe St. John's might deviate more here from other universities and colleges, but we love non-traditional students. I don't know, more than 40% of my freshman class were students who had either taken like significant time off, or, you know, a year, or had gone elsewhere. And again, it's sort of what you bring to the table. I mean, those students tend to, you know, if they've taken a little longer, 5 years, whatever, they tend to be sort of more ready, more mature, and those things come across either through an interview, through the essays, through various pieces of the application. So at least at St. John's, that would not be a deterrent at all. But I suspect at other places as well, you would be warmly received. You know, you all might know this, but you know, the colleges, and I'm going to take the highly selective, you know, have 3% of their, you know, people go, but most colleges are really anxious about enrolling students, right? Like they want to enroll good students, they want to enroll students from all over, they want to enroll students who are ready. But there are projected to be significantly fewer high school age students in the next 4 or 5 years. And so yeah, colleges are going to want you to visit their campuses. This is another plug for, you know, ask if financial hurdles for visiting lots of colleges are, you know, a factor. Ask a college if they have a program to, you know, either once you've applied or once you've been admitted, to come visit their campus. Many colleges have assistance to either reimburse you for travel or to book some of the travel for you. But yeah, colleges are going to be looking at students, whether they're 17, 16, or 22, you know, so I think that in some ways it'll be a different market kind of going forward.
We had a question, maybe Barbara could take this first. Is there any sort of standard number of colleges to which to apply, so that one has a good range, get in somewhere, but also not be overwhelmed by the process?
So I encourage the students that I'm working with who are not performing arts students to limit their list to 10 schools. And of those 10, to limit the highly selective or highly rejective, however you want to call them, colleges to 6. So at least 2 schools that, based on your academic profile and what you know about recently admitted classes of students, it seems like you're more likely than not to be admitted. And then another 2 schools where you're sort of 50-50, right? You sort of fit the profile, but maybe they're admitting fewer than 50% of the students. And then those colleges that admit less than 30%, you really want to limit those. If you're a performing arts student or a visual arts student applying to colleges where part of the evaluation is going to be based on an audition or a portfolio, then you're going to want to probably increase the number of schools that you're applying to, because those schools are even more highly selective. And in that case, I would advise having a mix of some colleges that are portfolio or audition based and some that are not. So for instance, if you think you want to study acting, sure, you can apply to a bunch that are BFA programs, but you should also apply to some that are BA programs that don't require an audition. Yeah.
Anything else to add there? All right.
Well, I guess I could say though, you know, Barbara, what's your experience with having kids apply to one school in the fall and be happy with that and be done?
I've had some students do that. And it's, if they know for sure that that's where they want to apply, it's a much lower stress situation, right? Like you don't need to go and find 10 colleges, that's for sure. I think that because of all the hype around highly selective colleges, there's this false understanding of statistics. Allison, you can speak to that part better than I can, but I think there's this sense of, you know, in order to go to a good college, it has to be some college that only accepts, you know, 10% or less of the students who apply. And so if I apply to all of those schools, I am increasing my chance of getting into one of those schools. So I would say that the place you're starting at is probably the wrong place. You're not starting with the self-reflection and looking at what is it that's a good fit college for me, and then figuring out which ones of those colleges are good fits for you. And if you do that, it may be that there's one college that you're really happy with. And if you can apply early action, or if finances aren't a consideration for you, early decision, and get an answer sooner rather than later, you might be able to save yourself the angst of applying to a bunch of colleges.
I also want to add, because I've seen a lot of confusion around the early decision, early action sorts of things. So it's helpful to have just your own, like a Google spreadsheet to keep track of the dates and the terms if you are applying to more than one place. If you do have a college that is just like at the top of your list and you want to apply early decision somewhere, it does not preclude you from applying other places early action. But if you're admitted to the college that has admitted you under the early decision plan, you do have to withdraw your applications to those other colleges. But with the one caveat that you can sort of break the contract if the finances don't work out. But the general idea is that, you apply only one place, early decision, and then, but you can apply multiple places at early action. And early action is not binding. It's usually just a college's agreement to notify you of their admissions decision in a way. So like our early decision deadline is November 1st. We let students know December 1st. Early action is November 15th. And we promise to get students their decision by December 15th. So most colleges will have something similar to that, but again, always good to sort of check the details.
Great. I have a question here. Maybe I'll send this one to Allison first. So just, kind of the idea of keeping track and sort of documenting kids' learning. So the question is, they homeschool private tutors in Mexico during the pandemic. How can those credits, kind of show up on the transcript now, being back in the United States, especially the language learning that was happening?
Yeah, so I would just, the way we keep track of things is, this is what I do. Not everyone does it this way, of the people who work at the 3 centers, but I like create buckets early on. So like if there's, if it was a language learning, so there'd be a bucket for that language. Maybe it would be that language 1 and that language 2, that language 3, whatever, Spanish, 1, 2, and 3, and then list in there the kinds of learning that the person did, to accomplish that. And I just keep track of those things as you go. Right. And then you can create, then you take that raw data and you can create more of a description and a narrative that goes around that course experience. And we also keep buckets open over years. So in a school, you would take biology, perhaps in your freshman year in high school. And so that bucket in a conventional high school would close at the end of the year. You're not going to get a chance to put anything more in that bucket. But if you're a homeschooler, you have opportunity to put more things in, right? And so like you go on a field trip the next year. We just went to Rutgers plant biology department, and it was a terrific trip, and learned a ton of stuff and saw somebody's research, and it's just so terrific, right? So that goes in the biology bucket. Right. And so if you still have that bucket open, you can like add things in as they go. So you might have, so if you were living in another country in the early years, of high school, you might have world history. Right. And so some of the things you experience there, but that doesn't have to be done. Right. You don't have to be done with the world history course just with that. You can add in some other things that you do, in the later years, and you don't have to really close it out until you get closer to applying. Right. Some things are going to be closed out and you're going to be done with those when you apply. And a couple of other things will still be in progress when you apply in the senior year. And you just have to sort of sort that out. Like, have you done enough of the study that we can close world history? Right. Can we close that bucket and work? We do holistic grading. So I work with the young person to think about what it is that they did and how that what the sort of broadness of the course is. Is there enough there, and how much did they learn in that process? And how much have they retained? So like how much effort did they put in? And so we just sort of think sort of broadly about how they do about it, and they give themselves a grade. So that would be for things that were self-study, or things didn't come with a grade already. And for a young person, I'm going to add this in right now because I think this applies to a number of kids. So I'm working with a girl who was in pandemic year in her freshman year, and her grades are terrible. She was home all that year, and she, it wasn't suiting her. She was online in, I think it was the 2020, 2021 year. She was online, and her grades are terrible. And it's Algebra 1, financial literacy, biology, and a couple more. And we're looking at ways that she could recover those credits. So she's just finished Algebra 2, or she's so close, not quite, but she's so close to finishing Algebra 2. And like, what if she took the Algebra 1, final exam, and that's more like her grade instead of the D that she currently has on her transcript, right? That might make sense. So I'm going to probably notate her transcript to so the college will see the D there, right? So it'll still be there, but we're going to like not include it in her GPA that's reported, and we'll notate it, what she did and why this makes sense. you know, for a couple things so that college can realize that she's a terrific student now. She would not get D's. Like she just doesn't get D's now. So, you know, like, so it doesn't make sense for us to leave that there. So I don't know. Anybody else have anything to add?
No, I think you did a good job explaining it.
Yep, great. And I'm mindful of time. I think we're a little bit past 8 o'clock, so we want to let our panelists get to bed or watch the Phillies game if you're in the Philadelphia area. That's starting in just like 2 minutes. So thank you everybody for coming tonight. We will just a couple reminders again, if you would like. So we're going to send a follow-up email to everyone who registered through Eventbrite with a lot of the resources in the chat and contact information for people here if you want have any additional things that you'd like to send. We'll also be, you know, we recorded this tonight, and so that video link will be in that email as well. And if you would like to be on the mailing list for the learning cooperatives, we do a lot of these sort of public events from time to time. So if you'd like to be notified of those, send a direct message to Heather Sia with your email address, and we'll make sure you get that on there. Anything else for this evening? Other than thank you so much for to the panelists. That was really informative. Great. Thank you all very much. And I guess have a good night, everyone.